Welcome to the Quantum Healthy Podcast. I'm Andia, a licensed addiction counselor, and along with my co-host, Laura Kissman, a quantum nutritionist, we will be inviting expert scientists, clinicians, survivors, and thrivers to distill their pearls of wisdom attained from applying quantum biology to their fields of research and everyday lives. Our goal is to bring you easy to understand principles and practices about the study of light, water, and magnetism so you can take your health into your own hands. This episode is sponsored by Viva Rays, the only eyewear company that truly understands your biology. Viva Rays are advanced blue light glasses designed with circadian biology in mind. Unlike typical blue blockers, they filter light in harmony with your body's natural rhythms, helping you sleep deeper, feel more energized, and protect your long-term health. We love companies that support biology-backed wellness, and Viva Rays is leading the way. Use code QuantumHealthy at vivarays.com to save 15% and support your sleep, focus, and natural energy the way nature intended. Enjoy this episode. Welcome, everyone, to the Quantum Healthy Podcast. Today, we have a very esteemed guest, Dr. Olle Johansson. He is the professor, and he is retired from the Karolinska Institute in November of 2017, but still very active in research. He was at the Department of Neuroscience, head of the Experimental Dermatology Unit in Stockholm, Sweden, and previously at the Royal Institute of Technology, Stockholm, Sweden. Of course, the Karolinska Institute and the Royal Institute of Technology are famous for their associations with the Nobel Prizes in physiology or medicine, chemistry, and physics. Dr. Johansson is world leading authority in the field of electromagnetic frequency radiation and health effects. Among many achievements, he coined the term screen dermatitis, which later was developed into the functional impairment called electrohypersensitivity, or EHS, which the recognition is mainly due to his work. He has published more than 800 original articles, reviews, book chapters, and conference reports within the fields of basic and applied neuroscience, dermatoscience, epidemiology, and biophysics, and is one of the 14 scientists and authors behind the original Bioinitiative Report that detailed the relationship between electromagnetic fields associated with power lines and wireless devices and health. His passion is to help accommodate the people with functional impairment of electrohypersensitivity under the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and since 2017, he has continued to investigate the adverse health and biological effects of microwave and radio frequency radiation from wireless technology, relying on the support of personal donations. Dr. Johansson's ongoing research will further improve our understanding of how and why electromagnetic fields are harming humans, animals, plants, and bacteria. We are so honored to have you today on the podcast. Absolutely honored to talk to you today.
Thank you very much, and I'm very, very honored to be on it. And wow, all the things you said, I'm blushing actually, you know. Thank you.
Can we call you Olle or
Oh, absolutely. Please do.
Okay. Olle, we always love to start by asking our guests their backstory. And in your case, where we'd like that to go is to tell us, how did you become so passionate about the biological effects of non-native EMFs?
Well, actually, it's all because of a radio program in Sweden. For many years, I had been working at the Department of Neuroscience, and the backstory, as you say, is very important in the sense that I, together with my supervisor, we had been extremely successful, and we had published papers in journals such as Science, Nature, Brain Research, Neuroscience, and so on. Journals where scientists sort of dream to be published, but most are never published in them. But we did it regularly. And that background is important because later on, people accused me of being like an amateur, not knowing anything about science and blah, blah, blah. And then I said, well, how many papers do you have in science or nature? And then they went silent. But having said that, one evening at 8 o'clock, actually, I was about to leave my laboratories, and then someone had left a radio on. And I'm not an avid radio listener at all, you know. So I approached the radio to turn it off and leave. But then I heard a lady, Kajsa Vedin is her name, and she worked at that time in the trade unions on the west coast of Sweden in the town Göteborg. And she was talking about the newly introduced personal computers. So we are at around 1980, and that people had got problems when they sat in front of them, skin problems, skin rashes, skin irritation, pricking pain, redness, swelling, heat sensations. And being in the field of dermatoscience, the science of the skin, particularly the nervous system of the skin, I listened very carefully. And in the program, she asked for expertise in clinical neurology. And I'm not a clinical neurologist, but I thought, well, a neuroscientist, that's close enough, you know. So the day after, I actually called her and said that I found her story extremely interesting and I wanted to help her. And she arranged for a meeting. She said, we will come to Stockholm from Göteborg and visit you, and I will bring a physicist. Yngve Hamnerius was his name. And we sat down, and all of this is the reason why we talk today.
Wow. Thank you for listening to the radio that one
Yeah.
time.
And you know, as I
Seriously.
said, I never really do it.
Yeah.
So the finger of God or something made me listen that particular evening rather late. And I stayed, I think, for like half an hour or 1 hour extra because I couldn't leave the program. And I found her description of these persons, both men and women, very, very interesting.
Mm, meant
Wow.
to be. Yeah. For you, Ola, but also for the listeners and watchers on YouTube, I just want to, before we go any further, explain that we did have an episode number 15, with the son of Dr. Martin Blank, R. Blank, who's the CEO of Shield Your Body. And we had him on. It was it might actually be our longest interview because he really went into the background of what is a non-native electromagnetic field. He did a fabulous job. So I would recommend people, if they find a lot with this one, go back and listen to that interview to get more background. But
I had,
are,
you know,
sorry,
I had the great honor to meet Martin Blank,
did
and
you?
he was fascinating, very knowledgeable, and we had lengthy discussions, very, very interesting. So it's a great loss that he's not with us any longer.
I know. We both ordered his book, the book that the two of them wrote together, Overpowered, an excellent resource
Yeah.
in anyone's library on non-native electromagnetic fields. And yeah, well, we'll get to maybe touch on some of his research in a second here. But our aim today is really to, I guess, pick your brain on how like your research has progressed to the point that you are using, I've heard you use the word colossal, which is an incredible word you don't hear very often, but just like the colossal impact of the biological effects of non-native electromagnetic fields with the unchecked proliferation of just this radiation, especially in the last decade. And gosh, even more since COVID, I would say. But not only those impacts on humanity, but also, as Andia mentioned earlier in the intro, all these species on planet Earth. So
Yeah.
just quickly, knowing that our blank did it once for us, could you just give us a little overview of the fields so people just can refresh their mind? What is an electromagnetic field and some of those technologies that we're most concerned about?
Yeah, the thing is that we have electromagnetic fields and signals everywhere, but they are not visible to us, and therefore we never think about it. I quite often meet people that actually don't understand how a cell phone works, that it sends and receives radio frequency signals. You have, of course, power lines with power frequent magnetic and electrical fields. And you have all the gadgets that you may use in your workplace or in your home, like smart meters, cell phones, DECT phones, that's wireless indoor telephones, baby alarms that are wireless. You have laptops, computers, tablets, and so forth. There are so very, very many gadgets. And the word colossal actually came from calculation. I said to people that if you can imagine that you remove everything in society and only keep the third generation mobile telephony, and not the second, not the first, not the fourth, not 5G, not Wi-Fi, nothing else, only the third generation. And then you compare the amount of such signals that your body and your cells receive compared to before it was introduced, let's say 30, 40 years ago. And I asked people the amount of radiation, is it twice as much as before? Is it 3 times more, 4 times? And I remember an old man said, no, 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 it's a lot more. I would say 100 times above the natural background. And the audience went, no, no, they would never be allowed to expose us with such dramatic strengths, and levels. But the actual answer is that the 3G compared to natural background is an increase of a quintillion times. That's a 1 with 18 zeros. And therefore, I said, is this a colossal increase? Is it an astronomical increase? Is it a biblical increase? I don't know which is the most proper word, but it's just enormous. And imagine that, for instance, the outdoor temperature would increase 10 up to the power 18 until tomorrow. Then not only Sweden and Stockholm would disappear in fire, but the entire planet would go like this. So the increases compared to natural background are, as I said, colossal. And the question is rather, what will happen acutely and over time with molecules, cells, tissues, organs, and all the species when they are exposed 24/7, basically wherever they reside, with few exceptions. And if you look in the scientific literature, then you see that there are today tens of thousands of scientific, peer review based scientific articles that point to effects. And many of them are scary, to say the least. Some are very scary. And a few of them actually keep me awake because they are very, very scary.
Wow. And
Oh.
that's not even talking about like the 5G we have today.
Yeah, I was
No,
going to say,
then you'd have to reintroduce everything from like power lines to radio, television, 1, 2, 4, 5G, Wi-Fi, and so on, all the gadgets and systems that we are surrounded by today and which send signals through our body. And the question is, how much more can we take? And pointing to the research we have today in June 2025, it seems already to be at a tipping point. And many of my colleagues actually say, well, it's not more research we need. We have enough.
right.
It's up to courts of law and politicians at parliaments and governments to read, act, and react. And they don't do that, actually. And we are struggling here. And when I say we, I mean myself and my coworkers, to wake people. And honestly, I'm a bit surprised that people, for instance, in the Stockholm underground, that they're not standing on the seats screaming in horror, because the results so far, they point in a very dramatic and dark direction.
Have you In your research, have you done meta studies where you've actually collected and then written a study based on looking at all these different ones?
Well, we have done a few such papers, yes. And what brings me immediately to mind is a study for the Bioinitiative Report, because at the first introduction of the original Bioinitiative Report, it was decided that a few of the best chapters should be published in a peer-review-based scientific journal, namely a journal called Physiology. And my chapter, very nicely, was chosen to be one of them. And then I expanded upon it, and in 2009 it was published. And when I wrote the updated version, and it was about effects on the immune system, and to make a very, very long story short, it seems as the immune system in our body and in other animals and so on, it's initially activated by the electromagnetic signals, like from cell phones, but after a while, it can take more. So it starts to deteriorate and leak, and quite quickly goes into underfunction. And I remember, since I was not sure, I felt that, oh, maybe I'm doing something wrong here. So I went across the Solnavägen, the street dividing the Karolinska Institute from the Karolinska Hospital. And at the hospital, one of the foremost experts in the world actually was working at the time on the immune system. And I went to this lady and said, please, I have written this rather lengthy manuscript, and the outcome is this, and I don't trust myself. I must have done something wrong. It can't be as bad as it looks. So could you please read it and send back all your comments to me? And she said, okay, I will do it. And after like 3 weeks, she came to me, and then she said, no, nothing is wrong. This is fantastically well written. You have collected all the information. You have used it in a very, very good way. And the only thing I could say is that now I am shaken to the roots. She was quite stressed by the results. And then I sent it to the pathophysiology, and it was published. So that's a very typical example of how you can use, as you say, in a meta study, you collect data from different groups and try to put them together like pieces in a jigsaw puzzle. But you need to be prepared. The image that is formed by the puzzle may scare you. And this did, yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I shouldn't go too deep into this, but this was 2009, and it is tempting to think about what happened 10 years later with the COVID-19. Had our immune system been weakened in such a way so an ordinary coronavirus, which normally, in Sweden, we have flus and colds all over the year. I just gone through one of them now. And so it's nothing new to us, but the new thing was that it was so strong and dramatic. And the question is, had our immune system been weakened to the point so it couldn't handle an ordinary flu any longer? It's a speculation. We have tried to get funding to study this, but we have not succeeded yet. But it's still on our agenda to study this.
I do know Dr. Magda Havas. I've not met her personally, but been on many Zooms with her in my Safe Technology group and the Canadians. I've just listened to her in the Canadians for Safe Technology, and I've been a part of the BRAG, the international project where we've studied little towns and cars and microwaves and really interesting, citizen scientists around the world using our little meters. But she did a paper as well as Dr. Beverly, I think it's Rubik is how she
Rubik,
pronounces it.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
But theirs was more, I think, with 5G, just because 5G, of course, was rolled out 2020. And then we got, well, it started in October that we know of in China, right?
Yeah.
COVID too, but yeah, and they found that was a correlation. They never
Yeah.
said cause, but the correlation. So those are the only two studies that I know of.
Yeah. I don't think there are any others
Okay, that was
because
my
I think
question.
and I think it has been very, very difficult for scientists to actually persuade funding organizations to give money because they say, no, that could have nothing to do with 5G. Well,
Mhm.
how about 4G, 3G, Wi-Fi, and all other sources of electromagnetic fields? And
Mhm.
again, it's tempting to use the word colossal because the number of gadgets people nowadays have in their cars, in their homes, in their schools,
Mhm.
workplaces, places of leisure, and so on. It's dramatically many, and they're all irradiating constantly, with very alien fields, I would say. They are non natural, as you pointed to. And the question is, how much more can we take? And maybe you and I can take a lot, but some other species, plants, pollinators, bacteria, or whatever will change. And remember, for instance, that bacteria, they don't go down when they're exposed. They actually go up in the sense that they use the energy to become very much stronger. And the way we see it in the clinical field is that they become antibiotic resistant, which is good for them, but bad for us.
Mhm. I've heard you talk about this. I want to say it was with Cameron Borg, or maybe it was Nick Pinot, but you really went into the detail of the fear of, what would happen if we
Yeah,
became antibiotic
yeah,
resistant. And I think you mentioned something about talking to somebody, it was during COVID, and this
yeah.
was it, and this doctor said to you, yeah, this is small potatoes compared to
Yeah,
what
yeah.
the big
Well,
risk is.
it wasn't I who talked. It was a
Oh,
reporter
oh,
interviewing.
okay.
Yes, and he interviewed a civil servant at the World Health Organization in Geneva, in Switzerland, and he asked the person if COVID-19 is the worst threat to mankind. And the WHO guy said, no, 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 we can manage it. It shouldn't be a problem. But then the reporter asked, what is then the biggest threat? And then the guy at the World Health Organization said, well, that's easy to answer. That's antibiotic resistance in healthcare. And the WHO actually later, after that, is calling this the tsunami in healthcare. And I've talked with a number of physicians, and they say that someone needs to step up and invent another form of antibiotics. Otherwise, we will lose the grip on it. And then people will, as they did at the end of the 1900th century, start dying from a splinter in the thumb.
Mhm.
And
Just
that
we
would be,
can't,
yeah,
yeah, we
that would
can't
be
imagine.
dramatic. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and
Ah, yeah.
after this, also scientists, and I'm sorry I don't remember the name right now, but they have shown that the same sensitivity also applies to soil bacteria. And in the beginning, I had a bad joke, I would call it. I would tell people when I gave a lecture, imagine that the electromagnetic fields we're talking about, like cell phone signals, would have an impact also on the soil. So one morning when we wake up, there wouldn't be any grass, no bushes, no flowers, nothing, because the nitrogen binding bacteria would be affected. That hasn't happened yet, but the joke is bad in the sense that now soil bacteria also become antibiotic resistant. Again, super good for them. They become strong, but very bad for us, for plants, and so on.
Wow.
Wow.
I mean, you can't even. The other day, I needed a new blow dryer. I haven't had one in a long time, and I was looking at them, and they have Bluetooth.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Everything has Bluetooth.
yeah,
Why do you need
yeah,
for why on earth do you need Bluetooth in a blow dryer? I don't
yeah.
know. But like
But,
it's like
it,
an enhancement so they can charge more for it, but
yeah,
people don't
yeah,
understand that that's not a good thing. You want the old thing. The
yeah. But
outdated.
it's so interesting you tell me this, because we have another project which we haven't been able to find money to, but it's about Bluetooth. And I did some preliminary studies using an empty train tunnel, and the tunnel goes through a rocky ridge, and it's shielded completely from various signals. And then we tested some measurement equipment, and I said, well, we need to measure some Bluetooth. Well, the other guy said, probably this apartment house building here, they would probably have a few of them. There were like thousands, thousands and thousands, an endless list. And we could then identify, and as you say, there were like Bluetooth enabled freezers, fridges, television sets, earbuds, and so on, everything. And they were pumping out these signals. Again, invisible to the human eye, but with the measurement equipment, the lists just kept on, kept on, kept on, kept on. So, well, we have definitely salted and peppered our society with electromagnetic signals. That's for sure.
That's an interesting way to say it. There's been I've been noticing in social media more and more posts on AirPods,
Yeah,
earbuds. One of them yesterday was saying that it was correlated with or caused it was causing thyroid nodules, which I mean they're here. It's not too
yeah,
far from the thyroid. I thought that was interesting. Yeah, I mean, I I would love, yeah, for you to strengthen this message because like speaking of addiction, I joined a gym to help my rehab my leg, and just about everybody there is in their own little space. I
yeah,
understand it's kind of boring to do machines, and so you want to do it with music. I understand that, but everyone has got either the Bluetooth headphones or the earbuds, and I'm just
yeah,
cringing because of what I know, because I test them with meters. Myself, I use an air tube headset that actually is shielded. I like the fact that it's shielded from my body and that it's that this the signal stops
yeah.
around here and then goes up. I hope it's safer. You're still using a cell phone, but I have everything downloaded and it's on airplane mode. The fields, if there's anything, there's maybe a small magnetic field, a little bit of dirty electricity, but it cuts the wireless from what I can tell from my meters. But if you can get the message out, anything you can tell us, any wisdom on Bluetooth,
Well,
because I
skip the
worry.
wisdom. Yeah, skip the wisdom. Maybe I don't have that. But, you mentioned, for instance, power frequent magnetic fields, which is a long name for ordinary household electricity. And that's actually the smallest increase recorded for artificial, non natural fields compared to the natural background. Such magnetic fields are only increased in the order of 100 million times. So let's say 150 years ago, the exposure levels were 100 million times lower in that frequency range.
Mhm.
And so again, when people say, "Oh, the fields they are so low," low compared to what? The
Yeah.
only reference you can use is the natural fields. And here on planet Earth, we actually have 50 hertz fields that are natural, so we can compare to them. And I mean, one piece of wisdom you can actually extract from reality, because as you said, they are sold to you, the earphones, the earbuds, the cell phones, everything, as being safe. If you go into a store and buy like a cell phone, no one will say, hey, you need to read this red information because it's actually dangerous. No one says that. You get the cardboard box, you go out and you use it. That's it. But a lot of big players have actually left this ship many, many years ago. I would say more than 25 years ago. And among them are, of course, the manufacturers and the operators. They don't take any form of responsibility. You have the radiation protection authorities who tell you that, well, maybe you should use it a shorter time and keep it away from your body and so on. Wait, I bought it as being 100% safe. Now suddenly it's not. And then you have the World Health Organization, and few people understand and know that they already 2001 cancer classified power frequent magnetic fields in association with childhood leukemia. And 10 years later on, all types of radio frequent fields, like from cell phones, were cancer classified in association with certain brain tumors. And these classifications still hold. And finally, the most important, and people in English speaking countries, they rightfully say, follow the money. And the money here are in the form of the insurance and reinsurance industry. And they do not take any form of responsibility for these safe products. And I remember I was at a meeting, and that was in 2002. Oh gosh, that's 23 years ago in London. And at the meeting were, for instance, representatives of Lloyd UK, which is the biggest insurance dealer in the world, the Swiss company, which is the biggest reinsurance company, and a small company from Sweden, If Scandia was the name. And they all said that for them it was not a question whether the cell phone radiation or other electromagnetic fields were dangerous or not. They knew they were dangerous. The only question for them was, who is going to pay in the future when people start to demand compensations because of, for instance, a brain tumor? And they didn't want to pay that. So therefore, they had bailed out completely.
I just lost a client who held her cell phone she was a realtor, 8 years, on the left side,
Yeah,
and she had no connection. Like, she got a glioblastoma
yeah,
diagnosis, told 15 months to live, and came to me just saying, I just wonder if there's any way you could help me buy time. That was the goal.
yeah,
And yeah, we won't go to all the details, but when I brought to her the research, that I've come across with cell phones and glioblastomas, she just, her jaw dropped, and she just said, why no one ever, all in my whole journey with the oncologists and through the surgery and all the things that treatments I took, not one person has ever mentioned this
no,
link.
yeah,
I'm thinking, oh my God, how can you guys not all be talking about this?
yeah,
Because to me, it's the first thing that comes to mind. And if she could take back,
yeah, yeah,
if she could have been told to read the insert that says this needs to be at least this distance from your head,
yeah.
and the tumor, of
And
course,
if
was right there on that side.
Yeah, and if I may come back to that particular meeting in London, because at the meeting there was a lawyer, a fantastic man. His name was Alan Meyer, and he told the various companies and also the insurance companies and so on that, hey, now you have listened to scientists like Olle Johansson, like myself from Sweden. So now you need to do something, because it's obvious that you have gadgets here that are not safe at all. And then I remember it took the manufacturers 5 extra years to come up with a very, very simple and very smart solution to that particular problem. Because, as you know, when you buy a cell phone or other gadgets, it talks about that you need to keep it at least 1 inch away from your body. Unfortunately, many people read from your head or from your brain, but that's not what it says. It says 1 inch away from your body. And that has a legal implication, which is extremely interesting, because that means that you can never, I repeat, never touch your phone. And because the moment you do that, you take it in the cardboard box, you have violated the instruction. So in the future, when you stand there at the court of law asking for economic compensation, the manufacturers will say, well, which hand did you actually use when you made a phone call or sent a text message? Well, it was generally right hand. We told you you couldn't. Sorry. You have gone against the instructions. Very, very smart. But it also points to the realization that they understand that these products are not safe at all. And again, I'm surprised that people don't inform and educate themselves about it. At least in Sweden, no one can say that they haven't seen this information because it has been over and over and over again in newspapers, tabloids, magazines, radio, television. So everyone is informed, everyone is educated, but people still keep on using it.
This makes me think about the screen dermatitis because like I want to use a light as an example to frame this question because we know that our bodies don't have a signal for how long you've been looking at a screen or touching your phone or in the frequency soup that we're living in. But like when we're in the sun, for instance, the sun's rays go down where the nerve levels are. And if we're laying too long in the sun, we get a little warm, and that signals us to go inside.
Yeah.
And with this, our bodies have no warning signals because these signals go deep down into the fat layers where there are no nerve signals to tell us. So I'm curious why when you coined that term screen dermatitis, like what went into that? What was your thought process?
Well, I was young then, so my thought process wasn't as good as maybe it is now. And we thought that it was some kind of skin illness, skin disease. And therefore, we term this term screen dermatitis because it mimicked classical dermatitis. And you are so very right in that it's actually much bigger than this. And therefore, later it was transformed into the disability or functional impairment. Today, it should even be called functional variability or variation, called electrohypersensitivity. And today, when I think about it, it's very much like the classical yellow canary birds in the coal mine. You said we don't have any sort of sensory mechanism to react to radio frequent exposures, but actually we do. We have our ears and we could listen to the electrohypersensitive persons because maybe they are the new normal ones because they have a avoidance reaction to a potentially toxic environment. They move themselves out of the exposure, just as you would do, move yourself out of the sunshine. And therefore, today I call the electron hypersensitive people normal, and people like myself who don't have any reactions to electromagnetic fields, maybe we are electro hyposensitive. We don't react. It's like a stupid yet little bird who doesn't feel that the air is running out. So maybe we should be very, very thankful to begin with, and also listen very carefully to the electrohypersensitive people because they are telling us that, and I like what you said, the frequency soup. Maybe it's a bit too thick. Maybe it's a bit too rich. Maybe we can't take more of this. And therefore, we need to act and react. And as we said before, only the big players have done it, like the insurance industry, and they bailed out. They left the ship 25 years ago.
We noticed, I think I can speak for Andia as well. We both wear blue blockers, and it's reminding me of how the same thing when we maybe you mentioned that already, Andia, but when you wear them in the evening when there's blue light around or in front of screens, over time you become sensitized to the blue light, and so now I feel like it's an analogy a little bit that once you get sensitized, I feel like we're actually normal humans again before we had all this blue light, and where you walked into a movie and it was very bright and very loud. Now people just go and they expect that over sensitization. And
Yeah.
anyway, that was
I,
fabulous. I'm so glad you explained that they are the
but I mean, you touch upon several extremely important things here. To begin with, as you probably know, the inventor or the physicist who came up with the blow light diodes in computer screens received the Nobel Prize in physics. Maybe that particular person in the future will not be as positively revered as we do now, because he introduced a lot of blue light in computer screens, in cell phone screens, in tablet screens, and wherever. And we are constantly exposed to this, which is very non-natural from that point of view. And you need to, with different means, correct it. For instance, in my laptop here, I have a program that automatically will remove a lot of the blue light and make it in a more natural type of sunshine light. And that feels peaceful, restful to your eyes and to your body. And as you say, you get more and more custom of normal individual. And I have two examples. And this is many years ago, we were allowed to use completely radiation free room. And it's a company in Germany, Siemens, who makes them. And we just brought people there, including myself. And we didn't tell people anything. But all the non-natural fields, they were shielded away. They were gone. And people were invited to come into this room, sit down, and just say after, I think it was an hour, how they felt. And everyone said, and I had the same feeling too, although I knew what was going on, that something was missing. Like you have had a stone in your shoe for a long time, and one day you take off your shoe and take away the stone, and you feel relieved, but it's something is also missing. And that was what they were reporting, and they didn't know what it was. They couldn't tell. And that sort of gave birth to an idea. And we wanted to take a small town in Sweden and for like 1 or 2 years, remove all the radiation, take away radio, television, everything that was wireless. And the idea would be to see if the normal, healthy people in such a town over time would become healthier. Because I often feel that people nowadays, they are not at the same health level as they were like in the 40s and 50s. Unfortunately, when we applied for a committee of ethics approval, they said no, we could not do this experiment. And we still to this very day don't understand. We wanted to increase the health, make it even better. And they said, no, you can't do that. And that's odd. So if you have a small town somewhere we could use, then we are very, very interested. And oh, wow, that would be super, super interested. And my guess is over time, people would start saying that they feel better.
I think over time people are going to be volunteering to be part of that study.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
exactly.
they
Exactly.
want to
Very
live
good
there.
point. Yeah,
Yeah,
very good point. I
yeah.
agree.
So much more on the topic of EHS I'd like to just touch on. My understanding is in Europe, the power grid uses 50 hertz,
Yep.
and North America 60 hertz.
Yep.
I'm just going to read this to get this right. Is that the inner mitochondrial membrane oscillates at 100 hertz. Do you know anything about that is a reason why in Europe would it resonate? I don't know if that's the right word. With 50 hertz and it's just doubled to 100. Is
Yeah.
that why, for some reason in Europe, like, do you know the reason why in Europe we see more EHS than we do in North America? Because that's what I've been told, and I've been my understanding is that in North America, we see more obesity and more, and in Europe, you're seeing more autoimmune. We see more diabetes here. And for some reason, they think, I don't know, I say they, I've
Yeah.
just what I've read different places.
Yeah.
You heard that link or know that link?
To begin with, and don't get offended in any way,
No.
but for a
Help me.
European coming to for instance, United States, it's shocking because the type of food that people eat and the amount of food they eat
I
is
know.
completely different to Europe.
They're left in
And
it alone.
yeah, and so there could be other factors that are at play
Right.
here. And when 50 and 60 hertz were decided, mitochondria were not even known to mankind. People had started to touch upon the idea that there was something in the cells called organelles and so on. But no, people didn't know very much about that. So that didn't have any impact. And I doubt it would make a very big difference, actually. So, but I'm not an expert on this at all. But I have been an electron microscopist for many, many years. So I've seen a billion mitochondria. So, yeah, anything and everything is possible, of course, but I think there are other reasons behind that.
It would be nice to see more research on that.
Oh,
You know,
I agree. And the mitochondria, should we call it trail or whatever, there are a lot to be found there, I think. So I would see gladly more research being done. We have had some few ideas, but again, it's so difficult to find money to support that kind of investigations. But maybe we are in the clinical reality actually approaching the cells from the wrong angle. Maybe we should look more at the mitochondria and so on. But
mhm.
it's a hypothesis, of course.
Right. Well, I think the demand again for that is coming as people,
Yeah,
like mitochondria is becoming a household word now because
yeah, yeah,
people are mitochondrial toxic. So I guess
yeah.
that's the question I had was, again, you're not an expert in mitochondria, but from your perspective, do you see microwave radiation as a mitochondrial toxin?
Oh, I love that question. It's very, very important and very good. I wish I had a good answer. I hesitate to say that. It could be, but being a dull and boring Swede and a scientist, I need hardcore facts on the table. So,
Well, we
Yeah.
know it dehydrates our cells, right? And one of the
yeah.
main functions of mitochondria is to build our water in our bodies. So, and I don't know, I can't point to the exact research, but that's what something that I like learned through my schooling. But yeah,
Well, I mean, the main function of mitochondria is an energy plant. You have all the different energy transformation units there. So it's really, and it's actually from the beginning a bacteria that has invaded cells and stay there. And they are like the motor unit of the cell. To generate water, it's much simpler to go to the tap and drink and the uptake. And of course, as you know, 2/3 of the body is water. But the thing is also that many people don't understand that the colossal number actually of our cells are bacteria. And they behave completely differently compared to the somatic cells, like the muscle cells or the bone cells or the immune cells. And the question is, should we be much more aware of the impact of artificial electromagnetic fields, as well as bad food, lack of water, and so on the bacteria?
yeah.
I I'm not American, I'm Canadian, and he is American, but I think the world, at least from Canada, we are watching what's happening in America with this whole MAHA, Make America Healthy Again.
Yeah.
And we're not hearing, I don't know, I haven't heard it talked about yet, non-native EMFs. There's a number of us all think this is a huge role. And I do know that I discovered RFK Jr. because of non-native EMFs. It wasn't about vaccines or anything else. So I'm really crossing fingers and hoping that, maybe they could hire researchers like you, Ola,
Oh
to
yeah, that would be
help
great.
people. Yeah, I'm just
and
putting it
and
out there for the
I
future.
discovered, yeah, I discovered him the same way. He was talking about 5G and electromagnetic signals and so on, but I
And the
think he
children.
has had to leave it for the time because he has so many other things on
Oh,
his desk.
but he did. So this actually links to something we talked about before we actually started recording. He has an organization called the Children's Health Defense, and now, of course, it's got chapters in many different countries, including Canada. And you said something to Andia and I that was profound at the beginning about children. Can you tell us a little bit about what motivates you to keep going in retirement as you are?
Well, I am retired, as you said, and I still keep on. And people often ask me, what is the driving force? And the simple answer is when I go outside every day for a walk or go shopping food or whatever, and I see children, and they are innocent bystanders,
Mm.
and I can't pass them without feeling guilty and ashamed because they may have a future that is dramatically different to the future I had when I grew up. And wow, we need to do as much as we can so we don't spoil the future. And the last few weeks in this month of June, I have basically every day received big headlines from the leading biologists around the world, all saying the same, that life on this planet is coming to an end. The loss of species and the loss of number of individuals within species is again colossal, and something very odd is going on. And I hate to say that, for instance, 5D, the wavelength is in this order, and that's the size of a honeybee or an insect or some other small animal, and they are the ones that are gone. I know, for instance, in Canada, more than 90% of the honeybees are gone. In the United States, more than 90% of the bumblebees are gone. And so I hope that, for instance, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has time to allow a few scientists to look into this using the toolbox that we have at our disposal and doing controlled studies under standardized conditions, especially to be able to rule out if it's not electromagnetic fields. What
Mhm.
is causing the reduction of pollinators? Is it pesticides,
Pesticides.
insecticides, viruses, pathogens, the different farming landscape? What is it? I mean, in Sweden, it's such a big difference. Basically, only cereals are grown here. And all the other crops, they're gone because they were dependent on pollinators. And things like oat, wheat, barley, they are wind pollinated, so they don't need insects. So
Wow.
if you like bread, then the future is yours. If you like something else, like fruits, vegetables, nuts, well, then it will be different. And there is a very famous photograph, by the way, from a big food store in the United States, I think it is. And you see all these oranges, apples, beetroots, and whatever, everything there. And then they take away all the food items that are dependent on pollinators and take a new photograph, and the store is basically empty.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's so shocking to see. And of course, Elon Musk's kids, they may be able in the future to buy apples at a price of $10,000 per piece. But you and I, we can't do that. So the future may be quite different. And I saw, was it yesterday, that they calculate that, for instance, bananas will be completely gone in 10 to 20 years. And I love bananas. Banana split is my favorite. So,
Okay,
yeah.
so I don't mean to put more bad news here, but one of the questions that Laura, I really wanted to ask you that pertains to future. So we've heard you hypothesize that in 5 generations, we might not be able to make babies as humans unless we stop the non-native EMFs. Can you explain this catastrophic prediction and how you came to it and what we can do to change it around?
Well, it's very simple. There are two Greek scientists, Magras and Xenos, and in the 1990s, they published a study. They were asked to investigate a town in Greece because the health had deteriorated over time. And they tried to find what was the common denominator. And to make a long story short, they then resumed to doing animal experiments using mice, and they exposed the mice to exposures from different antennas at the antenna park, several big antenna towers. And then they saw that nothing really happened in the first, second, third, and fourth generation, but the fifth generation practically was completely infertile. And that also combined with right now very dramatic reduction in sperm cell quality, studies showing that, for instance, cell phone radiation is deleterious to sperm cell quality, number, morphology, motility, etc. You pick these together, realizing that, wow, maybe it could be that we will have an equal hard time in 5 generations. And the thing is, of course, that our grandchildren, it's impossible for them to call back to 2025 or 1994 and say, hey, could you please stop that? Because otherwise we cannot make any babies in the future.
Right.
And I remember the editor of that particular journal, and the journal's name is Bioelectromagnetics. He said that when he received this manuscript from the two Greek scientists, he got so stressed of the results. So he made something which is very uncommon in science. Namely, he took the referee reports, but then he decided to send it to 5 new referees because he thought something must be wrong here. It can't be like the scientists have concluded. And the 5 new sent their referee reports back to the editorial office, all saying, no, you should publish it. It's perfect. And you should remember that this particular study in this particular journal, Bioelectromagnetic, it's the industry's journal. And so they had all the reason to sort of hide it, but they couldn't. So it's there, and no one has been able to show that it was wrong. And in the meantime, as you know, the human fertility is going down dramatically in many countries.
This
And
reminds me.
again,
Oh,
you
sorry.
know, I'm not naive. I do understand that there could be different culprits working together to produce this, but why shouldn't we be allowed to investigate all these gadgets? They are sold to us as being safe, which the insurance companies doesn't believe, but it's completely unsafe to try to investigate them. Then you get no funding, you have no possibilities to do it. And I'm just afraid in Sweden, we often talk about to be stupid is to turn your back on a wolf. Is that what we are doing now? We are turning our backs to something that is harming us and will continue to harm fetuses, children, teenagers, adults in coming generations.
Oh.
Yeah, at many layers it harms.
Yeah.
This reminds me of the Pottinger cat experiment. I can't remember if it was 5 generations, but all they did with that one was they stopped feeding them raw milk and I don't know, raw meat or
Yeah.
something. and
yeah.
they just cooked it. And I don't know if it was 5 generations or 6, I can't remember if they were infertile or they just got sicker and sicker. But I don't know if
Yeah.
either of you two remember. I'd have to look it up, but
But I could add to that, we have just a few weeks ago published a study regarding honeybees, and we shielded them from the natural so-called Schumann resonances, which are extremely low frequent magnetic fields. And then the queens stopped producing fertile eggs. So, in summary, insects like honeybees, they need the natural fields, and probably we need them too,
Mhm.
but they don't like the non-native artificial fields. Shouldn't we listen to these honeybees
Mhm.
Yeah.
and to the sperm cells, the immune cells, the DNA spirals and so on, shouldn't we listen to them? For me, it's very odd that the party is going on, and I don't understand that countries have time to go to war, like in Ukraine, Gaza, and so on. There is no
Yeah.
time for that. You need to fix the biosphere because we are losing it.
Yeah.
And people may say, well, an insect less or so. Oh, you don't see the chains. They are locking into each other. I had, and that's probably like 2 years ago, a Canadian man who wrote to me and said, Olle, in my garden, I used to have all these beautiful birds. They are completely gone. What has happened? And I said, well, I don't know. But if you send me a list of the birds that you don't have any longer, I may be able to comment. And he sent me the list, and I said, oh, this is easy. They're all insect eaters. There are no insects left in Canada. And then you don't have any insect eating birds. They are dead. And
Yeah,
if you don't have the birds, then you see the interlocking all the way up, including ourselves. Suddenly we will be at the tipping point where we can't go back any further.
yeah, Dr.
And
Martin Moreed explained that just with blue light,
yeah,
and showing blue light from our homes, our outdoor lighting, and what
yeah,
it does to the insects, and then of course then
yeah.
the next
And
generation,
and
they
and
can't eat.
every evening I go down on my knees praying to God, saying, please make me wrong. And all the other scientists like Martin Blank and so on, make us wrong, make all the products really safe, and there are some other culprits at play, and let us investigate them instead. But that would also mean that tens of thousands of scientific articles all must be wrong at the same time, and that has never happened before.
Well, that's the whole point. We do research, right? It's to find the answer, and
Yeah,
unfortunately,
exactly. Yeah,
there
exactly.
is not
No,
the answer we want
yeah,
to.
and I love that comment, because after all the years in science, it feels a bit odd to produce scientific data that people just turn their back on. Just imagine if you were like a dairy milk farmer, and no one would like to have your products. Why should you keep on? Some days it feels, well, tough, I would say.
Can't imagine.
Yeah.
You're yeah. What did I say in your bio? You have over 800 publications of a variety of publications, and it's like no one's. We had Jason Christoff on the podcast, and I'm thinking of him now because it's like, is there some kind of power at B that is keeping all of this suppressed so they can move forward with some agenda? I don't know, but
Well,
it's
could I just comment
exciting.
quickly on that and say that it could very well be such an agenda, I agree. But I would at the same time also say that the most supportive and curious players have often been representatives of the industry because they see opportunities, and I have coined the expression that someone needs to come up with tomorrow's green, human, and environmental friendly technology. And of course, being a Swede, I want Ericsson Telecommunication to do that, because then Sweden will be richer than Japan ever was. And you want a Canadian or a North American company to do it, but someone has to do it, because it's obvious that the current technology is definitely not safe. We need to have something else, whatever that would be.
Olle, can you give us 3 actions that we could do right now to help that 5th generation?
Oh,
What comes to mind? What
yeah,
comes to
that's
mind?
very easy.
Is it
Um,
easy? Okay.
yes, all your listeners and viewers should continue listening to your excellent podcast,
Oh,
because they would learn a lot. And the last maybe 20 years, I have spent a lot of my own time on informing and educating people wherever I meet them. So that's very important. Then, of course, as a viewer and listener, you should also write to your local as well as national as well as international politicians. And when you do it, you should ask very simple questions that can only be answered with a yes, a no, or I don't know, or a figure/number. Nothing else. Like, can you guarantee that cell phones are safe? Yes or no, nothing more. So that you can do. And then, of course, if there are kind people listening to this podcast, if they want to support me, for instance, or someone else, it's important, really, because without that support, and even if it's like a single dollar, that's more than no dollar. And we have this link you can visit, research.radiation.dk. That's Delta Kappa or kilo at the end. And if you scroll down a bit, you have options where you can use PayPal or direct bank transfer. And maybe you will also post this for people to see.
We most
we will.
certainly will include all of that. Absolutely. We want you to continue fighting the good fight. And you're doing it all of this in your retirement. Oh my gosh.
Well,
Bless you.
yeah. And do you know the stupid thing? And I'm sort of happy I don't have children and I'm not married, because, and don't tell anyone this, but I actually use my retirement allowance to a great degree, because without it, we would have a very difficult time. But of course, it wasn't meant for it, but someone needs to step up and pay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
goodness.
thank you so much for.
Well, the same. Thank you very much.
Oh.
And for your now a bit tired viewers and listeners, I could tell you that there are millions and millions of more things to be covered, and there are food for thought for years to come. And I often refer to a situation I had in a commuter train here in Stockholm, where I met a rather posh lady a few years ago. And she was looking into her smartphone, and I saw an opportunity. So I leaned forward and said, "Hey, do you know that the World Health Organization in Geneva, in Switzerland, has cancer classified the radiation, the electromagnetic signals that your smartphone is using to communicate?" And she went, I think you say, ballistic, and told me to go to a very warm place and I should mind my own business and so on. And I said, please, please stop. You have a smartphone. Couldn't you please Google WHO, brain tumor, and cell phone? And she did. And for a few minutes, she went silent. And then she looked up and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, sir. You were completely right. It's all here. But now I get angry again, but not at you, but at my Swedish government and parliament and health authorities. Why have they not informed me? You see, I'm not only a mother, I'm also a grandmother. And a week ago, I gave my granddaughter a new smartphone, and now I regret it."
Mm. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's what your viewers and listeners also can do: inform and educate,
Right.
talk to people, anyone. I mean, no one knows who I am, so I could easily talk to anyone. But you need to break this zombie-sized situation and get their attention. But I must say, people, they do listen. What they exactly do later on, I don't know, but they do listen actually.
Well, you're a celebrity in our book.
That's probably the thinnest book in the world, you know. So
I got
no, really, really, I could tell you, I remember and that was 2019. I came to Philadelphia and I should do 1 hour taxi journey outside. And the black driver started to talk to me and I talked to him and I gave him like an hour lecture, and I'm talking about 1 hour. When we came to the address, he refused to take any money. He said that he had listened to the most important lecture of his life, and he went back to Philadelphia without any payment. So
wow.
there are good people out there.
Wow, Ula, as I'm going to actually read you what I wrote for my thank you that's still coming. So you're just getting a little snapshot here. But I put thank you. The very first thing is for the most important conversation we may have just had in life. Never mind this podcast. I actually wrote that. Yeah,
Thank you.
that's how
Thank you.
powerful this has
Thank
been.
you.
Okay, before we go to, I know she's going to go, I think I know where India's going here. Arthur Furstenberg, another
Yeah.
big hero, passed away
Yeah.
this year.
Yeah.
And I know that when I asked you those, what are three things, you never said what he probably would have said, which is ditch the cell phone. And that brings me to, I could ask you why you didn't say that, but before that, can I bring you to India, who wants to ask you an addiction question? Because I think addiction is, I don't know, are you thinking that people are just too addicted that they couldn't even possibly contemplate ditching the cell phone?
Well, I mean, I agree with Arthur, and actually, I gave him the idea of ditching the phone.
Did you?
Yeah,
Wow,
I did that,
no way.
and he really was very very excited about it and told people always to ditch their phone. But at the
Yeah.
same time, well, I mean, people here in Sweden, at least, they are extremely addicted. I've never seen any drug or alcohol or cigarette smoking or anything as powerful as the addiction to their smartphones and cell phones. And maybe I'm becoming more, well, realistic, maybe you can say, that you need to find rather a new technology. We talked about the tomorrow's green, human, and environmental friendly technology. And I don't know how that would look like, but maybe we need to ditch not only the phone, but everything wireless and go back to a wired shielded situation, which I've written a lot about. And of course, in a wired shielded cell phone, for instance, and it wouldn't be a cell phone, it would be an ordinary old fashioned phone, you would get the same information and there wouldn't be any difference. You would get exactly the same, but you couldn't run around. And as you know, when people are interviewed, often the mobility of cell phones and similar gadgets is the least important aspect. So most people, they are sitting somewhere doing their work or leisure time or whatever, and they could do it with a wired concept as well. But you are right, ditch the phone. I should have said that as number one.
We could have a new acronym.
Yeah.
It's DTFF.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
I love it. That's my new acronym.
So
I
Um,
love that.
the addiction question I wanted to ask, just, I mean, you know, we we know that smartphone use is problematic and addictive, and it just seems like when I look at articles and things on like social media addiction and things like that, they're never discussing non-native EMFs, they're never discussing blue light. And it's like, if we were to take those things from the phone, which we used to have in the 80s, it was called a phone that hung on your wall, like a landline, like
Yeah.
and I know that the researchers have not come to a consensus yet to even put this in the DSM-5, or the future DSMs, but the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, but we just know that with any addiction, it's referring to daily life activities. That is
Yeah.
a hallmark of addiction, is that it's disrupting daily living. And then, we also know that people know that there's negative consequences, but yet that they continue to do it. Another
Yeah.
hallmark of addiction. So, just what are your thoughts on the addictive nature, and then the fact that screen use is it's the most common thing that they're using in schools now? And
Yeah.
how do we go back to the way things were? Obviously, something needs to change, and you know, you have explained clear evidence here
Yeah.
that
I mean, there is hope, and because
okay,
certain countries and their authorities have listened to this. My own country, Sweden, for sure. You have France, you have recently Spain, that now actively reduces the amount of time spent for children in school with these type of digitized tablets, computer screens, laptops, and cell phones. And that's just from a pedagogic point of view. And it's interesting to see the same happened several years ago in China. And China as a country have a very simple business idea. They want to buy it all. Canada, the US, Sweden, France, Spain, everything. They want to have it all. And to do that, they need to have pupils and students and adults that are very, very well educated, informed, and attentive. And they have, of course. And the one way to ensure this is that pupils and students should not spend time on this. They should spend time looking at and listening to the teacher. And the same is now happening in other countries. Still very few, but there are such countries. So there is like a revolution taking steps backwards. And that is today's progress. So I am actually rather hopeful because it has to do with business and money. Countries that allow their kids to do this, they cannot compete on a global market. So they need to shape up their act when it comes to pupils and students, and more realize this.
yeah. Well, let's let's hope. But I just thought just came in my head too about, like, are we just all being so selfish to turn a blind eye to this, because we're on the earth right now, and it's not going to be ended, but in 50 years when I'm dead, like, so I shouldn't have to worry about it.
I think you are very right in this. Yes, I think people are much more selfish than they used to be, and they have a very short, how should I say, time span which they
Yes.
think about, and it's so short actually, so they don't even care for their own kids.
Yeah.
It's just now and here, now and here, now and here all the time. And I try, when I walk around here in Sweden, to talk to parents about the effect, short term and long term. They do listen, but I'm not sure they actually go back home and really changes something, and that needs to happen. But maybe we need decisions at another level. And here in Sweden, there has been a number of extremely interesting authority announcements from the governmental authorities. One of them saying, for instance, hey, parents in Sweden, you cannot allow yourself to play with your cell phone while your kid is taking a swim at the shore, because several children died because they drowned while the parents were sitting a few meters from them. And so the authorities went forward with this. The same authority also said, hey, parents, you have to realize that if you allow your children to do this day after day after day, they will become myopic or nearsighted to such a degree so they could never apply for a driving license.
Oh, wow.
Not for a car, not for a motorcycle, not for a boat, not for an airliner, and so on. And they just said, you have to just understand this. It's your choice. But if they become so myopic, they cannot be allowed to drive a jumbo jet, for instance.
Right.
It's simple, it's simple. And again, maybe the parents woke up for a few days, but I don't see any big change or shift. And I was shocked to learn that kids had drowned here in Sweden in summertime, a few meters from their parents, that
Oh,
were sucked into their smartphones.
wow. Well, I'm glad that you gave us a glimmer of hope.
And
Biggest
remember,
problem there.
remember, remember, I'm a Swede and we are by nature depressed. So that's the way we are.
See, I'm used to Swedes all singing at the dinner table, drinking, being
No,
merry.
that's the
That's my memory.
Vikings. Yeah,
The
that's the
Vikings.
Vikings.
I,
Yeah,
I
they were
had
from,
some.
no, they were from Denmark and Norway. So.
Well, Ole, as or Ula, as we close up here, will you answer our signature question, which is, what does quantum health mean to you? What does quantum healthy mean to you?
Oh, that's extremely important because everything we have talked about now is based upon quantum ideas when it boils down to the type of exposures, microwaves, and whatever. So that's inherited into these questions. And I also always been very interested in the whole quantum idea, and of course, I often think about the father of quantum physics, Max Planck. And he said something like this: your opponent, as a scientist, your opponent can never be persuaded. He or she has to die. And Max Planck was extremely, he had an extreme opposition against him. Even Albert Einstein didn't trust him. But of course, apart from Einstein, today no one can mention the names of any of these opposing scientists. And in every town and city in Germany, you have a Max Planck Institute, and Max Planck himself did receive the Nobel Prize in Physics. So it ended well, just as this podcast ended well. So.
I, Ola, as I was listening to you, I didn't think of Max Planck. I even have a physics degree, which is crazy. I should have probably thought of him, but I was just thinking of Galileo, and
Yeah.
I was thinking, is Ola a modern day Galileo, where he's been, you have fell on deaf ears or you've been criticized, but
Well,
in
yeah.
generations they will look back to you and think he was a hero of his time.
Well, I mean, I would be more pleased if they look back and say that no, he was wrong. It was safe, all of it.
Oh, yeah.
And the insurance companies, they could crawl back to the ship
Yeah.
and take part in society. But as we said before, that would be a revolution with all the papers having to be wrong, and that has never happened before. And I wouldn't like to come to St. Peter at the pearly gates, he is saying to me, Olle, why didn't you speak up? You saw and understood. It's better, he says, Olle, you tried your hardest, you failed, but you tried your hardest. So you are welcome into heaven. And that's enough for me.
Mm,
Oh, wow.
you are truly an angel, that's for sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, so much more now because of you and you leading so many. I know so many people look up to everything you've done.
Oh,
Uh,
thank you.
I know Laura has a well-crafted thank you, as she always does.
Oh, well, we've been using it up as this interview's
We've
gone
been
on.
using it up.
Oh gosh, but I do want to say, you just gave a gem a second ago. Thank you for trying your hardest. I feel a good result for you at the pearly gates. I feel optimistic for you.
Oh,
And
thank you.
and honestly, I think I speak for Andy and I when, a year and a half ago, when we came up with why we wanted to do this podcast. It was for this very reason. It was a bigger mission than just trying to promote our own little businesses or whatever. It's really about the planet and the species on it, and not just humanity. And we're trying to get these conversations because they are so important. And so thank you for being always so outspoken.
Thank you.
And just trying your hardest to warn humanity of the implications of playing with this invisible, I think you've called it firestorm of non-native EMFs. Your courage to tell the truth despite all the criticism that you've endured along the way. I have a t-shirt that's fearless as FUCK. You earned it. You're in that category. Absolutely. And Dia mentioned the, foregoing your retirement here and, still working so hard, but really, for answering the questions about the transgenerational effects today. That was very depressing, obviously, the species, but just this, you're imploring politicians and people like us to go to our politicians to really look at the biosphere, and we have to fix it now. And thank you so much. Please continue, and maybe we can have you back. I'd love to continue this conversation, to hear that you've
I mean, there are so many other things to cover. It would be a great honor to come back sometime. Yes, thank you.
And I should end with thank you for all your work for the electrohypersensitive normal people out there, because I've just got shivers. Because I know so many from my safe technology groups, and I know they are going to listen to this podcast, and they really are thankful for all the work that you've done to help them have rights and to find accommodations, because they're refugees in wireless and Wi-Fi.
Thank you again so much, Bumps, and thank you everyone for listening. We will see you next time. Thank you for sticking around at the end of this podcast. We want to thank our sponsor, Viva Rays, who allows for us to get this information to you. They offer top-of-the-line blue blocking glasses, which, as we know, are critical for our health these days for blocking artificial light at night. Over 90% of our time is spent indoors under artificial lights, and this puts us all prone to circadian rhythm disruption. You can use the code QuantumHealthy for a discount. Link is in the show notes.
Thank you so much for listening to the Quantum Healthy podcast. We hope you found some value in this information. And if you feel inspired, please share it and leave us a 5-star review. This will help us reach so many more people. If you want to connect with Laura, you can find her at laurakistmanwellness.com and Ndia at ndiaray.com. Links are below in the show notes. Now, go find some sunlight and embrace your own quantum healthy.